So our tax tea of the week is going to actually be about an accountant who has been convicted, who was recently convicted, for working as an accountant for basically doing illegal activity. So it's the accountant has been charged with what they call college admission schemes. All right. So for a period of from 2008 to 2017, which is actually a pretty long time, 9 years, this accountant was working for an organization called Counseling. It was Counseling Services is what they did. And basically, long story short, what this organization was doing was they would basically have like parents would pay this owner of the business money to basically bribe coaches to get into specific schools or pay off admission officers and all of those things. Because you remember a couple of years when there was that whole admission scandal. Do you remember that? Like
Mm-hmm.
celebrities had paid off,
Yep.
paid off people. So basically, a similar process. But this was the accountant for that business, and so he was charged with like at least they were smart and got an accountant, right? But he was charged with like invoicing parents for these illegal payments. So basically the company would pay the bribery charges to the college admission officers or the coaches, and then he would turn around and invoice
The parents.
the parents. And then he actually claimed that it was like legitimate. I don't remember what he called the charges, but he actually claimed it on the financial statements of the company, which per the rule of the IRS, you have to mention all of business related charges, even though they may be illegal. But so basically included those in the financial statements. But really, the biggest thing was that the money was, of course, illegally was for an illegal activity. And so his charge wasn't actually that big. He's been suspended for 3 years. So I don't know if he's going to have the option to be able to practice again. And then he has to pay a $20,000 fine for this, but not as intense. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that becomes important because I mean, when you have a professional license, I mean, and I'm assuming if he was suspended for 3 years, that must have meant he had some type of professional license or whatever. I mean, there are ethics involved with this of like, hey, if
Hmm.
you know that what you are doing the accounting for is illegal activity, but you are, changing the verbiage or you're changing the language to disguise illegal activity, like
Right.
you're definitely going to get yourself. I mean, you're going to be in trouble because as a licensed professional, you have to hold yourself to a higher standard,
Hmm.
and you can't just be like, well. I didn't know what the money was for. I was just invoicing. I was just following instructions. Just like, nah, it's not gonna fly. Like,
Yeah.
as an accountant, and that's why I always tell people, business owners, is if you're working with an accountant to where your accountant just does what you say and asks no questions, no type of
Mm.
verification or documentation for it, you might not be working with somebody who's on the up and up. And so I
What do
would
you mean by
definitely
up and
say
up?
like somebody
Like,
who is like really legit about it. Like someone,
oh,
for
okay,
example,
okay,
like
okay.
if you're because I've seen you know, business owners who like, hey, I heard this on TikTok or I heard this on Instagram, and they'll come back to their accountant or their bookkeeper and say, hey, I heard we can do such and such. And the bookkeeper just does it. And it's just like, no, that's not right. Like your
Yeah.
bookkeeper should have told you, or your accountant should have told you, yeah, I know you heard that, but either your business doesn't qualify for that or
Mhm.
that TikTok video you saw wasn't right.
It's wrong.
And
Right.
so I think you want to work with someone who is willing to support you in the things that you're trying to do, but also will be able to, hold you accountable to say, hey, I'm not gonna do this because number one is it exposes me to potential
Exactly.
disciplinary action, and it
Exactly.
also exposes you to disciplinary action. Like my job is not just to do your books and have a blind eye to it. I mean, part of my job is to help keep you out of trouble as well.
Exactly. No, that's a really good point. And actually, now I forgot one last point. this he can't say that he didn't know what the charges were for because he was basically facilitating both sides of the transaction. So he was paying the money to the college coaches, and it wasn't just for sports, it was also for like SAT, ACT, like
So he was
bribery
paying the
stuff.
bride.
He
So
was
he was
paying the
paying the
bribe, and then he
bride
was
and
making the
invoicing.
invoicing. Yes. And then he basically falsified documents that allowed parents to claim these as donations on their tax.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
So
surprised that he just didn't. I'm surprised that they didn't do more than just suspend. Like, did they give him jail time for
so
this?
yes, but he's been released. Like he's being supervised for 3 years. So I don't know. I guess that's like probation or something.
Like
So he's
house
like
arrest or
supervised
something?
release. I guess so. Yeah. It didn't mention specifics. It just said that he said 3 years of supervised release and was ordered to pay $20,000.
Yeah, because
So
once you get into actual lying about what
yeah.
you're doing, like that
Hmm.
becomes a whole nother crime. It's one thing to say, hey, I did this, but then to say, hey, I did this and I
And I knew.
lied on tax forms about it,
Yep.
and I helped other people lie and say these were donations. And it's just like, because
Hmm.
I'm like, well, what organization did they donate the money to? Like, because
this
now
this key organization, this key worldwide foundation, whatever it's called. So they disguise themselves as maybe some sort of counseling service for students. And so that's how they
wow.
masked it. And so the parents, I guess the parents were saying claiming that they were writing these payments off as donations because they were maybe putting into whatever services this counseling company was offering, but it was all bogus. So
I mean,
yeah.
I would say that is so wrong on every level. And this will be the last thing I say on this because I know we got to wrap this up. But I mean, I do think this one is a warning for anyone who's giving to a charitable organization. If you are directly receiving some type of benefit from that organization, then the gift that you're giving, it might not be 100% tax deductible. Like you can only
Mm,
deduct, the value of whatever you're giving that may not be directly attached to some benefit that you're getting back. Like, say for example, like if I'm paying for my child to go through some counseling program, like I can't deduct that as 100% tax deduction because my child is receiving a direct benefit attached to the money that I'm giving. So, I mean, if you ever find a situation where that's happening, like I will say is it is a red flag. You definitely need to talk to someone who knows what they're doing so you don't end up getting yourself into trouble. And because I'm sure all of these families that took these as deductions for these 9 years, now all of their tax returns have to be amended and they got to go back
right.
and they got to pay taxes on this. And plus, their child probably got kicked out of school once they found out. So it's like you got to
Yeah.
pay taxes. You can't get your money back. Your child got kicked out of school, and you might actually get in trouble for this to where it's just like, man, this is a mess.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, like, I guess because they were convicted in 2022, what happens if you've already graduated at that point? Like, do they repeal your admission or your degree? Like, how do you even handle that?
I don't know. I mean, what I will say is that even if they don't repeal your degree, I will say for the kid, if the kid did not know this was going on, and let's say their
Yeah.
parents were doing this without their knowledge or whatever, I would say that's a different situation. But I will say even in that case, I mean, this story will follow you around. I mean, because even if you think about like the big, some of the celebrities that were involved with the college scandal, I mean
Mhm.
even the kids, think about like their children. Like people know who their parents are to where it's just
Mhm.
like that reputation and the weight of that now follows your kid wherever they go. Like if people know that that's your parent, like your parent went to jail for, paying money to get you into certain schools, like
Yeah.
that reputation's going to follow you. So where you may not lose your degree, but you may lose some value of your reputation that you have because of this
Credibility.
action.
No, that's really good. That's really good. So, no, good point. I think we can wrap it up there. And thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode. Until next time.